Welcome back to Inside the Huddle. We are back in the studio, and you can see it's a little bit different. We're starting the episode without Coach Adams, but some things change, situations change, and so we're going to take a break from the sports this week, from Magnet Cove Sports, to say the least, and we are going to do a little bit of a special. I was up in an awards ceremony last week, as y'all saw on my Facebook, and I was fortunate enough to win an award, and so I thought it was best that we took a break from sports and doing a little award special. So on the line this week, we're going to get straight into our guest portion. On the line this week is the executive director of the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative, Mr. Ti King. He is the man behind the award ceremony I went to, and he has been a pioneer in Arkansas podcasting. So, Ti, it is great to have you on the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and Ti, and you can talk about this a little more about the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative as a whole. Can you explain to the audience a little bit what exactly you do and your thoughts on podcasting in the state of Arkansas?
Absolutely. So, yeah, as you said, I'm the executive director of the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative, and what we are is we're the nation's only 501c3 nonprofit organization for podcasters. And what that means is that we provide free resources to people who either want to start a podcast or grow a podcast. And we also spend a lot of time just promoting podcasts, especially here in Arkansas. We're nationwide, but what we really want to focus on is building a huge, diverse group of people who are creating amazing content out of the state to sort of get ahead of the curve. Historically, every time a new medium's been created, like newspapers or TV or magazines, like Arkansas waits up to 100 or even more years after it's been created before it dips its toes in the water and tries to create something. With podcasting being so young, there's no reason at all, with the barrier to entry being so low, why can't we start creating shows and getting recognized? Because, when you put a podcast out, there's no border, right? It doesn't stop at the state line. Like your show, I'm sure your in your analytics, you probably see that you have listeners from other places than Arkansas and maybe around the world.
Yeah, and you make that reference to there's no borders, and I have experienced that when I'm not podcasting. I'm a play-by-play guy at heart, and I've had the great opportunity to have multiple foreign exchange students that have played sports, and
Hmm.
it was cool to be that parent's lifeline, to watch their kid finish their senior season in America. And she was originally from Germany. One of the names I will never forget. One of the ones I had to sit down and learn from her. But yeah, I like how you said there's no borders, and when there is no borders, the sky is the limit. There is no limit, and so with that, y'all have created the ARKAST Awards. And can you explain a little bit what the ARKAST Awards is and what transpired last weekend up in Fayetteville?
Yeah, for sure. So RCast itself is kind of a chicken and egg situation where, so the organization's the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative, but the festival that we hold every year for podcasting actually came first. So it started with the 2022 RCast Podcast Festival in North Little Rock. It was just a single night, and I did it as a fundraiser for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And when I found out that there had never been any kind of event for podcasting in Arkansas, because I've been doing it forever, been listening to podcasts back when they were, MP3s that you downloaded off of people's websites and put them on your MP3 player, which is a very long time ago. So the festival, we brought in a lot of people who were podcasting in the state across a wide variety of areas, from travel to music to just interviewing talking heads type of situation. And it worked out so well that I kept getting asked about, how do I start my podcast after the festival? And we realized there was an opportunity to open up, an organization to help with people, other than having to pay, what would normally cost you thousands and thousands of dollars just to pay a consultant to try to get you started on podcasting, or you invest, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of time online watching YouTube videos, trying to figure out on your own what equipment do I need, and what's the best setup for me, and how do I interview my guests, and how do I get better my, explaining my personality to the camera. And so that's why we started the nonprofit organization in the first place. But yeah, in RCast, this is the third year for that. Last year was the first time that we actually brought it to Northwest Arkansas, and there was just such a huge difference in from when we hosted in Little Rock to Northwest, because there was just a large, I don't know, a support group, I guess, in the arts, and so it was easy to get media attention. And so the same press release I would send out for Central Arkansas, send it out for Northwest, and had all the major media outlets reach out for interviews, and they covered the festival, so it was great. But yeah, this year was the first year that we did the ARKAST Awards. um, Another thing that I do in podcasting, because there's so many different branches, I sort of get involved with everything in the podcast industry. I'm a member of the TBA. So you've heard of the Academy Awards for film, right? So podcasting also has an academy. So I'm part of the Podcast Academy, part of their marketing team. And one of the things that they do is they have an annual award show for podcasting. And I noticed that all the people that were getting awarded had huge productions behind their names. I mean, it was iHeartRadio, it was Wondery, some of the biggest ones that are putting out the most, well-known podcasts like Serial, and Conan O'Brien show, those big ones, they're pushing them out. They were the ones that were getting nominated. So all the independent creators were kind of getting overlooked. And we kind of get overlooked here in the flyover states anyway, right? Especially Arkansas. We're not really known for creating media or having big stars coming out of here. We've had a few here and there, but so I wanted to create a night where we could celebrate the independent media creators in the state, especially in podcasting. But I didn't want to be the one to just select who it was and then put it out there. So we opened it up in, I think, March. We allowed for people to nominate their favorite podcast, and we had an overwhelming amount of people that sent in over 2,000 submissions. And then we opened up the voting. I think it was like a month and a half, allowed it for people to come in from the public, and was again overwhelmed by how much support each one of these podcasts had behind it. And so it was a really tough competition. And even your category, what was really impressive is that there were some people on there that had shows on ESPN radio, and you were nominated, of course, for Best Sports Podcast 2024, and you won.
Yes, I will most definitely say I was very shocked. I saw my category, and that's a lot of guys that I look up to covering the sports in the state of Arkansas. But you made a mention that I think was very interesting, and you can agree with this, is the media world and the arts world is by far growing farther in Northwest Arkansas than I think it is in Central Arkansas.
Well, yeah, for sure. And you think about so media itself, I would say that this is twofold, because like media itself is growing more in Northwest because you do have the head of three different corporations. You've got Tyson, JB Hunt, and Walmart, of course. And with them having offices from everybody that they supply in their store, they require them to have a headquarters there in Northwest. And so they just made a call out to all the people that were working from home across the country. If you're going to continue to work from Walmart, you've got to move to Bentonville. So it brings a really great, diverse. Of course, Arkansas itself is typically always we're kind of behind the rest of the country when it comes to like catching on to media. You know what I mean? Or when a trend happens across the country, by the time it reaches us, it's been, kind of gotten over in California, right? But we're bringing people in from all over the country, so it kind of keeps us fresh and up to date in that area of Arkansas. So, and then there's the sports part, right? So Northwest, obviously, we got the Hogs, we got a lot of really great high school football teams there too. Central really doesn't have a whole lot going on. I mean, there's a few, high school games, but we don't have any, we obviously don't have any college football going on or any major basketball or any of that. We've got like I would say probably the two biggest music arenas, and that kind of brings in a different crowd, but that's about it when I think about sports.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with sports. High school wise, you have Fayetteville, you have Greenwood up there. Obviously, you have the Hogs, you have both Bentonville schools, you have Rogers schools. You can even stretch that over to even, I think, even to Mountain Home. And I know that seems like more North Central, but if you look at how it goes back to it's simple, and that's where the majority of people are in the state with those big three corporations. But I wanted to say one more thing before we talk about my win in itself. Is you mentioned about watching those award ceremonies and seeing that it was always kind of the big guy winning. And I will say this: it was very nice to get recognized because I'm a one man crew myself. I edit, I produce, I host, I do it all myself. Now I have a support team like you saw Thursday night that is always going to be in my corner. But when it comes to the production and the talent side of it, I'm by myself. So it was really cool to meet like minded people that don't have hundreds of people behind the scenes working. They're working their tail off by themselves to make that production.
No, for sure. And there's a lot of good work that goes into it. And that's, part of what we do is we talk to, pretty much every state has what's called an arts organization that usually gets grant money from the state. And what they're responsible for doing is helping to keep the arts funded and, encouraged with more, projects that are keeping them, generating. Obviously, you've got to get paid to be able to do something, continuously at some point, right? So that's kind of what their whole mission and vision is. So Arkansas has theirs too. And we have spent hours and hours and hours of discussion with those types of organizations being like, well, here's why podcasting is also an art. And it's like, why do you consider to be movies an art or documentaries to be an art if podcasting is not an art? You know what I mean? So with that, we see that it is an uphill battle, kind of. I mean, it's the easiest medium to get into, but it's kind of an uphill battle to get recognized and get respected for podcasting. Even though it's getting easier, and that's kind of, I think, I'd like to think that we're sort of knocking some bricks out of the wall on that and helping progress that forward a little bit. But I think I'm seeing a lot of progress. I'm seeing more companies that are sponsoring podcasts. I'm seeing more podcasts like yours that are being recognized, and you are a one-man band, and it takes a lot. I mean, when you get into podcasting, it's not just, oh, I've got to get my personality here, and this is my talking points. It's also, but before we started, we had to figure out some issues with your SD card. You know what I mean? There's a lot of technology that goes into it. There's a lot of online marketing that goes into it. I mean, there's just everything. And so, I commend you for doing everything you do on your own. But yeah, it's a lot of work, and I think that the people that are doing this type of work, and especially if you're sticking with it, you're dedicated to it, you deserve the recognition.
Yes, sir. And now I guess we can get into the whole reason that I guess we are here to focus on those people. But I really, honestly, did not have words when I found out that I had won, and most definitely Thursday night. I made the joke up on stage in my acceptance speech that I had wrote 5 different speeches. I wrote a couple myself. I actually had AI write one. It was not very good. And then I had a couple journalist friends from across the U.S. write a couple, and I didn't like those. And so I do what I do best and go off the cuff. And so that's what I did Thursday in my speech. And it was very much an honor to stand up there with you and your team and get recognized. And I actually last night, which would have been Monday night when we're recording this, I actually got to talk about my experience again in front of our school board. So that was cool to bring light to tell people how important media is, and not even just the podcasting side of it, media as a whole to such a small school. But it was definitely an honor to be up there Thursday night and get the honor to hold that award.
No, that's amazing. And, I said it on stage, before you got up there, but it's not just about you, and that already. But like you're the leader now. Like you set the pace for all the people that are coming up behind you. You're opening doors, and so that's great. I didn't even know that you had that meeting with your the school board. That's incredible. But no, it was an honor for us, and for me and my team, it was an honor for us to be with you and your team, because you definitely brought a team to come celebrate with you that night.
Yeah, those are the people that listen to the most podcast rants and high school sports rants than anybody else. I made a Facebook post after, and I was like, I have all these people to thank, and I put in there, I was like, my mom, my brother, my dad, my girlfriend listen to more high school football rants and how I have to stay up late and edit a podcast than anybody else. and I'm blessed to have those two tables of supporters that were there Thursday. But moving on from that itself, I wanted to get your thoughts on how you think podcasting can play a role in high school sports and sports across the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty, straightforward. I think it's just we need to be recreating more shows like yourself. You know what I mean? Some of the schools now are, instead of doing their online or their over the intercom sort of announcements for their school, they're doing a podcast instead. And so like they're headed in the right direction with that. But I think it's even more so with sports. You know what I mean? Because I think about how were high school games sort of consumed if you weren't there in person, right? Because you can't make it to every game, but people still want to keep up with the scores. They want to keep up with what's going on with the play-by-play. And there's just a certain enjoyment that comes from just listening to the game and listening to the interviews, the post and pregame. But normally you would have to do that on radio because the local radio stations would cover it. But then that's just, it plays the one time. And if you didn't catch it then you didn't catch it. So I think it's important to start shows like yours, where you're able to go kind of off the script, right? You're able to bring the conversation in the direction that you need it to bring something unique and fun to your show that especially appeals to your school and capture it. You just capture it and being able to put it out there on podcast, platforms, because there it lives forever, right? The internet never forgets. Rather than having to catch a radio show, now you've got this show that's been, produced, put out there. You can consume it at any time you want to, whenever you get time to go back and listen to, some highlights of the games or listen to the players after they've seen the scores. Like that's absolutely perfect. So I think you're right on the map. And I'll say it doesn't take a whole lot to get started. I don't know if you started with a lot of equipment or not, but like as long as you've got a phone in your pocket, you've got a studio. And so just starting there is a great place to start. A lot of schools, actually, if you're doing it in partnership with them, then there are plenty of grants that are available out there that can help you get started with production and even equipment. And of course, we're willing to work with other schools and try to get podcast studios started in any of the schools. We've done that several times, and so we're happy to support any way that we can there.
Yeah, and I love how you make the mention of going off the script and really making the show your own, and I think that's super important. And I've noticed, I have my coach on every week, and then I have a guest from, with my equipment, it can be from anywhere, So I think it goes down to find your clique, whatever you think would appeal to and find your audience. And I think that a lot of podcasts have found that, and I think it's super important to be successful, but I also think it makes it super personable, and I think that's important to keep the longevity of a podcast going. But moving on a little bit farther, I wanted to ask you another question. Where do you see, the APC, the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative, here in the next few years? Where do you see yourselves going?
So I don't know how familiar you are with like what the film industry has done with Georgia, but anytime you go to see a movie and the credits roll at the end, you see the Georgia Peach logo and it says "Made in Georgia," right? And that's because Georgia has worked out that anybody that films a movie in Georgia will get a tax credit, a huge tax credit. That's why a lot of Hollywood films are now moving their sets over to Georgia. And what that does for the state is that it brings in people who can cater, who build the sets, who drive the actors and the producers around. I mean, like, so you're giving local jobs to the people that work there in the state and bringing them into the industry when they would normally, if you wanted to break into, the movie industry, you would have to just sell everything, go to California, rent an apartment for an exorbitant amount of money and barely scrape by and hope that you make it to a commercial or something for medicine and then try to break it to TV. But you don't have to do that anymore. And so what I want to do is the same thing for podcasting in Arkansas. I want to make this so rich and such an inviting place of talent in the podcasting that anytime that place like Wondery or iHeartMedia, if they want to come out to film their seasons of podcasts because they're going more in a video direction anyway, that they come and they hire Arkansas talent. But if they come here, they film, they record, they use our people who are already being self-taught, like you yourself. You're self-taught on your sound production and your editing, and so like those are highly valuable skills. And you're doing it in a way that you didn't go to school for it, right? So you know how to improvise and teach yourself how to work around things that when they don't go the way that you plan to, right? So that's what we want. We see ourselves as helping that become a reality in Arkansas, to where our Arkansas is the podcasting capital of the country. But I would also like to start branching out and teach other states how to do it as well. But yeah, with that central sort of vacuum right here in the center of Arkansas.
Yeah, I like the vacuum term there. That is a great way to put it. Attract other people, and I think that is exactly how you do it. You have to make yourself marketable, like you said previously. Marketing your show, but you have to, in your shoes, market the state of Arkansas and market what the state offers. But I assume y'all are planning on doing an ARKAST Awards 2025.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, already we're already in the planning phase of next year's event. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, planning is something that I think is so overlooked, whether it may be events or podcasts, because, correlating, when your guest is on, or when, in my case, my coach comes in, or if you have, I can't remember who it was, but they have guests from across the nation and across the world, so they have to do time zones, and I'm blessed enough to not have to worry about time zones. All my guests have been in the state. But I think Arkansas, and this is not a metaphor, but it's going to end up being a metaphor. It's kind of an uncharted diamond when it comes to talent in the podcasting industry, and I really appreciate what the APC does. It was really an honor to be up there last week in Fayetteville, and it was really just good to see all the talent that doesn't get the the mainstream media attention, and that's one thing that I try to focus on is with my podcast. Now I've had some pretty big high school coaches on here and stuff, but I love to cover the uncovered kid. And the podcast that gets 1 million views. Joe Rogan's podcast has how many ever views every time he uploads. But there's kids across the state that have D1 college offers that nobody knows about. And I can see some correlation from you trying to uncover the podcast town of Arkansas to the correlation of me trying to find that kid that deserves the media attention, but maybe just because he goes to a smaller school or is a second or third string behind an Arkansas or Texas commit, he doesn't get that attention.
No, that's exactly right. And you said something there. It really it really clicked for me, and I think I'm gonna start using that. We're digging for diamonds. That's exactly what we're doing. We're searching for diamonds in Arkansas, but we're trying to make the most fertile ground possible for them to be able to to be discovered and grow. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, Ty, I really appreciate you being on today. And like I said, it was an honor to be up there last week. And I look forward to working with you more soon with the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dalton. Yeah. And like I say, for any of our upcoming events and everything that we've got planned, for next year, they can be found on arkansaspodcasters.org. We have a newsletter. We've got updates all the time on our website. So yeah.
Most definitely. And I will put the link to all that in the description below on the YouTube video. But Ty, I really appreciate you hopping on such short notice.
Hey, no problem at all, Dalton. Thank you so much, and congratulations again.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right, guys. Wow. That was Ty King from the Arkansas Podcast Collaborative, and he is the executive director up there. I'm playing you will see some photos from our trip. Coach Shane Hartzell, my family, and I took to Fayetteville to accept the Best Sports Podcast Award in the state, and I am blessed. I really don't have any other words. I wanted to make this episode about that and thank you viewers, you subscribers, the voters that voted on it. I really still don't have words. I've had some great guests that have made this possible. But the plan for the podcast now is we're going to keep going. Even though the Panthers lost, we'll get back next week and have Coach Adams. He's going to do a little recap of the season. And but we're going to keep it going. I think it's important to keep it going and until the end of football season. So the plan right now is to keep it going. And then it's just going to be myself talking. And then I plan on having a guest on, one of the coaches that is still in the playoffs. So that is the plan. But could not be more blessed and more proud of the Manico community, the way they voted. Like Ty said, I had some big names in my podcast category and names I look up to, and it was a super duper great couple of days up there. But thank you again to the voters. Thank you to the listeners, my parents and my family, the school administration that all make this possible. And I could not go an episode without thanking my sponsors. Hartzell's Farms and Excavating. Vernon Hartzell has been a right-hand sponsor the entire time. Has never doubted whether we could do it or not. Has never said, man, I don't really know. He's always been there with his support, whether it be monetary-wise or whether it just be, hey, that was a great podcast. So I really appreciate that. And then the Johnson family over in Hot Springs on Albert Pike with Razorback Camper Sales. I've known them since I was a kid, and it's great to have them on board. They have been the same way as the Hartzell family, but could not say enough about those two sponsors. Also want to give another shout out to Arkansas Podcast Collaborative. You just heard from Ty King, the executive director. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Inside the Huddle. Thank you again to all who voted, and we will be back with Coach Adams next week. But that's going to wrap up the award special for Inside the Huddle.